the real magic is knowing what the different executives at Amazon care about. So Amazon prides itself on having an escalation culture, which kind of blows my mind. Because to me, I'm like, that's no way to run a company. But it's because they're very entrepreneurial and they're super siloed and they've always wanted to move very fast with new programs. And so they build it while it's taking off. And then some stuff honestly never gets fixed until someone raises their hand and says, you got a problem over here. So when we escalate and help our clients with these escalation letters, we are writing it from an Amazonian perspective, like why they have a problem with their enforcement, why this particular program isn't working, how you're hurting buyers, how you're hurting Amazon because they have less selection. So we try and make it a little bit about our client and a whole lot about what Amazon cares about, which is itself and buyers.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
So I'm super excited to talk to Lesley Hensell, who started Riverbend Consulting. And I'd love to start with sort of what the origin story was for Riverbend. So what was the problem you were trying to solve and the reason you figured I'm the one to do it?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Kevin. So I have kind of a two-step origin story.
Right.
So the first is I'm an old school business consultant. Like I used to work for accounting firms and big marketing agencies back in the day, and decided I wanted to be a work at home mom so I could be with my kiddos. And I worked from home for several years. Then one of my children was diagnosed with autism and a bunch of learning disabilities. And my husband and I were like, okay, what are we going to do? He's not succeeding in school. We decided to homeschool him. That did not work with being like a hardcore consultant, long days, lots of calls. So I learned about selling on Amazon. And I would sell on Amazon. I would work nights and weekends when the husband was home with the kids. And then I would homeschool during the week. It was such a great model. And as I started meeting people at conferences, there were all these sellers with problems with Amazon that they're like, I need a plan of action. I don't know what that is. Well, being the old school business consultant that I am, I knew all about plans of action and root causes and all that jazz. So I started about 10 years ago writing appeals for sellers, helping them with compliance issues on Amazon. So then one day a guy was referred to me about 7 years ago, and he said, Lesley, I've been with this agency. They tell me they can get my account reinstated. It's been months. I can't get it back up. Help me. I'm suspended for inauthentic. I wrote him an appeal. 2 days later, he's reinstated. He says, I'm great at sales and you're great at the service thing. So we should build a company. So now he's my business partner, Joe Zalta, and he manages the sales organization. I manage our service team, and we are at 6.5 years and almost 100 employees.
Wow. Well, that is a great origin story, though. And it really is a testament to how few people are able to do what you and your team does, right? Because the fact that there's such growth potential is a testament to your ability to solve problems, and also a testament to the fact that Amazon can make problems pretty challenging for sellers.
Yes, we actually talk about how our business shouldn't even exist. If Amazon was very partner focused and saw sellers as their partners and really had great customer service, if you will, on the seller side, we actually wouldn't be around. It wouldn't be such a mystery. But what we've done is combined people who are sellers with ex-Amazon employees. We have actually 150 years worth of Amazon work experience on our team. And then you throw in me, who never worked at Amazon. So I don't have a lot of respect, shall we say, for how you're supposed to do it. I'm much more of the creative thinker. Let's throw the spaghetti at the wall. So you put all that together and we can solve a lot of problems.
So, what are the most common challenges that sellers face? Because a lot of the sort of compliance stuff seems to be run by bots and not even human reviewed at Amazon. So, like, stuff can hit the fan and sort of nobody even knows why. Certainly on the seller side, if you haven't been there for a while, you may be completely unaware of what you did wrong or what they thought you did wrong, even if you didn't do it wrong. So what are the most common issues that people are dealing with?
Well, and you're absolutely right. They rely a lot on data. And so allegedly still I know that human beings actually push the button to suspend accounts. Allegedly, human beings also hit the button to suspend ASINs. I'm not sure about that anymore. But for accounts, yes. However, they have really been trained to believe their tech. They believe the data, and a lot of them don't feel empowered to overrule the data, which, if you think about it as a frontline employee, you kind of understand, right? The data says this. What am I going to say? You're wrong. But the data and the programming make mistakes. So what we're seeing a lot of right now is inauthentic, which is, everything old is new again. I was telling someone earlier today, it's just like fashion. If you sell long enough on Amazon, you see the same things come up. So like 10 years ago, all the account suspensions were for inauthentic. That was before they did ASIN level suspension. They just did accounts. And it was all inauthentic all the time, just like bell bottoms from the 70s. And then people started wearing bell bottoms in the 2000s. Inauthentic is back. So there's a whole lot of inauthentic account suspensions. We also have seen, oh my goodness, the last year and a half, every day we get literally every day we get calls about linked account suspensions. That's where Amazon believes that a seller's account is linked to another seller account that is not allowed to sell on the platform. So it was suspended in the past or recently. Lots of false positives, lots of bad tech on linked accounts. I would say probably half of the suspensions that we see in that area are bad suspensions. And the other half are either the seller did something wrong or we understand why Amazon made the mistake. Like, like it was reasonable. It was reasonable for Amazon to think that there was a linked account. Lots of that. And then we're seeing a big return on review manipulation. This is because of pressure from the federal government, which has a lot of rules. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, has rules about reviews. And you are not allowed to pay people for reviews. You're not allowed to give them free product for reviews. They're all supposed to be real. So, it rolls downhill. So Amazon has to enforce against that because the FTC wants them to. So we're seeing a whole lot of sellers having problems with that, and it can get really expensive. You mentioned earlier, like the supplement space, and we see sellers in that space who will put an insert into a box or have something on the lid that says, scan this, get a free product, get a review. Now Amazon is making them recall all that inventory from the warehouse. Yikes. To get reinstated. So some of these can get really expensive.
Yeah, for sure. And some of them really are head scratchers, right? So I mean, in the
Oh,
case of
yes.
Truth Nutrition, it's vegan organic product, right? And they forced us to get a separate lab test to prove that it didn't have steroids in it. So of course, not only are steroids not anything you would put in a pre-workout anyway, but you certainly wouldn't put it in a vegan certified pre-workout because steroids are not vegan, right? Like it's just like the craziest thing, but you couldn't have a conversation. You just had to run the test, right? And send in the lab report. And because you can't argue when that stuff happens because you feel like you're just talking to a wall, right? Nothing. You just have to go ahead and jump through whatever hoop it is. And we've already seen, I've only owned the brand for half of a year, but already we've seen situations where they're really head scratchers. And it's a good thing folks like you are out there to help people when they're scratching their head wondering like, so what happened?
Right. And supplements and topicals are probably the areas where you see the most of these bizarre testing requests. I've had so many I've had to work with where Amazon asks for this particular test. It's called HRIPT testing. That doesn't matter. What all that means is it's a test where you put the product like on someone's skin and you leave it there and you see if they break out into a rash. Okay, it's essentially that's the test.
Hmm.
But those tests take a long time. They're like 6 weeks or 8 weeks to get those tests. And Amazon will ask for that randomly on something like a shampoo, which makes no sense because shampoo is on your scalp for like 10 seconds and then you wash it out. They've asked for that testing on products where the lab will literally say, we won't do that test for that product because it makes no sense. And so we end up fighting Amazon saying, I can't give you that test. No lab will do it because all the labs will tell you that is crazy to ask for. So there's a real problem at Amazon sometimes with expertise,
Yeah.
that they ask for the wrong things and they don't know. They're just following the SOP.
Right, right. I guess the next business will be a lab that will do crazy tests that make no sense, right? Because apparently there's a huge market for that. Like, I don't know, it makes no sense, but we have to run it anyway. So yeah, that's really interesting. So I'd love to do a follow-up because, and maybe you get into this conversation with clients, maybe you don't, but for example, Truth Nutrition, it's heavily FBA centric, but we do have a Shopify store and we're putting increasing amounts of marketing efforts behind the Shopify store, not because we dislike Amazon, but really from a risk hedging perspective, right? In that, there's a lot of eggs in the Amazon FBA basket for us. We've already seen hiccups that made sense, some hiccups we caused, some hiccups we didn't, right? And that level of concentration risk for business is pretty significant. So, do you at all get involved in those sort of strategy conversations as a former business consultant where you say, hey, maybe that you should figure out how to sort of mitigate your risk a little bit, consider, putting more emphasis on other marketplaces or putting more emphasis on your own stores?
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of diversification and talk to clients about this all the time. And you can diversify within Amazon and outside of Amazon. So, for example, do you have a Shopify store? Is Walmart a good fit for your product? I know Walmart can be frustrating, but I do have clients now with up to 10 to 20% of their volume. Some people, it's Etsy, who have 10 to 15% of their volume on Etsy. Well, if you have 10 to 15% on Etsy and you've got 10% on Shopify, if something happens on Amazon, you're at least keeping the lights on. You may not be making a profit and you may be, getting your vendors to be calm and give you some time, but you're at least keeping the lights on. Also, within Amazon, a lot of sellers will just have one business model. Why? Have you thought about doing wholesale and distribution and doing private label? Or if you're private label, I know some guys who have 4 or 5 different brands they develop over time in different categories. So all diversification is good. Also, if you're in particularly challenging categories, it's nice to have a non-challenging category. So an example is like clothing has super high returns and it's really rough because the number of SKUs, because of size and color. And electronics has crazy high return rates, which most people don't realize till they get into it and go, oh no, consumer electronics. Wow. So then do you have something to offset that risk? Something, that's soft lines, something that's easier. I'm sorry, hard lines, something that's easier, low return rates. Think about like a memory card. Memory cards don't break. Very few times have you had one that doesn't work. If they don't get returns. So, balancing that risk within your portfolio from every possible angle is a good thing.
So yeah, given that some folks should be creating a portfolio both within Amazon and outside, and in some cases, some of these portfolio companies, let's say, might have different cap tables, and they're even sort of aggregators that have gone out and bought a bunch of brands. But you mentioned that one of the things where people are getting flagged on was this sort of common account flag, right? So how do you sort of stay within the rules in that situation? Because I happen to have a business partner for Truth Nutrition that's unique to that business, right? And so if I were to go into a different business, and I'm actually thinking about one at the moment, I'd probably have a different business partner in that other business, right? So, the IP addresses, if I log in to do something, would be the same. Like, would I be risking triggering one of these, just due to the commonality of a corporate owner or an agency, for example? I run an agency and they log in as well, right? Are those the kinds of things that people should think about it for their portfolio?
So here's the good news. Those risks have gone down because Amazon changed the rules to allow you to have more than one seller account. There are caveats. So when you have more than one account, you still need to treat them as two separate businesses. You need to have different bank accounts, different EINs. So financially, and set up a separate LLCs, it needs to be two clearly different businesses. And then secondly, the most important thing is you can never, ever, ever sell the same ASIN on both those accounts.
Right.
And ideally, you shouldn't even be selling the same brands. And if you can avoid being in the same category, that's even better, because what they are trying to avoid is anti-competitive behavior. And when people have multiple listings on one product with multiple companies, that can be seen as pricing manipulation and other kinds of manipulative behavior. They don't like that because, again, the government doesn't like that. So if you have those different the different financial instruments, different bank card, all that, you're usually protected. Amazon isn't supposed to connect you by IP address and shut you down. Now, just be aware that if one of those accounts does go down for a really bad reason, it could still take down your other accounts. Now, let's say you had one account that was suspended for bad product condition. That isn't a really bad reason. Like, it happens, product quality, you're going to fix it. But what if one of your accounts went down because they think you're selling stolen goods, or a Section 3 violation, which is code of conduct, which means you're maliciously attacking competitors or maliciously treating buyers. I have people who've been accused of money laundering because of the way that they had their business structured. If Amazon thinks you're money laundering, they're taking them all down. And then you have to, disprove the negative, right? And then get out there and get them all back up one at a time. But for the most part, as long as you're never going to cross over those ASINs and categories, if you can, you're going to be okay.
Right. Well, that's great to know for both myself and for others who are potentially either already running multiple companies with different EINs, but don't commingle your stuff together, I think is the best practice there.
Absolutely.
So what are some other problems that you've seen a lot lately is, either being gated out of brands or some things perhaps that are more recent spikes?
So brand gating is a huge problem right now. And y'all, if you're a private label seller, I need you to stop thinking it can't happen to you. In the past, it couldn't. Suddenly it is. So for people who don't understand the concept of brand gating, that is where you may have had to apply to sell a brand, or perhaps you were just allowed to sell it from the get-go. And then Amazon can come along and say, nope, and put the gate down and say, you can no longer sell Nike, you can no longer sell Clinique. Well, I think we all understand reasons that someone might be gated out of Nike or Clinique, or recently had a client gated out of Kevin Murphy. These are nicer brands. They have lots of counterfeits, more expensive product. And so in those cases, they'll ask you for invoices, supplier information. They want to make sure that you're legit. So here's where we've seen something really scary happen. We have some clients who had ASINs suspended in particular brands, and they either ignored the ASIN suspension. So Amazon asked for invoices, asked for a plan of action. Client did not give them those things, just left the ASIN suspended, or they clicked the acknowledge button. So there's this relatively new thing where Amazon will just let you acknowledge a defect. So don't ever acknowledge a defect. And here is why. You're essentially saying, I'm guilty. It's like going to court and pleading guilty. And just because Amazon doesn't have a punishment per se, you don't want that on your record, because they will then use that as proof to gate you out of the brand. And in the most drastic cases, we have had clients gated out of their own private label brand. So they have thousands of dollars in inventory, hundreds of thousands in inventory, and they cannot sell their own brand of product because they failed to answer these ASIN suspensions or pled guilty. And unfortunately, in these situations, the appeal process is awful. I think it's because it's a new process at Amazon. This is a relatively new strategy. They're still working out the kinks on their end. I don't know if they even know what the SOP is to reinstate someone, because these aren't going well. They're not a straight line. We only get them back after lots of escalating, and they're just hard. So I know it is tempting when you look at that dashboard they've created under, performance notifications. And if you've got that green bar up there for your account health rating, people think, oh, I'm fine. No, you really need to look at the scorecard that says like the number of authenticity complaints 2, condition complaints 1, and go address those one by one. It's not enough to say I'm in the green, all good.
Right, right. So you mentioned escalation, and I would imagine that those other folks in the industry who claim to do the same thing that you do may not have the juice when it comes to escalation, right? So it sounds from your reputation previously, but also from talking to you, that you really always try to take the most fair road. Like, you understand what Amazon is trying to accomplish when they're doing something, and you also understand the seller's point of view. And so my guess is that when you do an escalation request, you're taken perhaps more seriously than somebody else in your industry who tries an escalation request just by randomly picking somebody on LinkedIn who works at Amazon, right, and saying, "Hey, can you help me?" And so I'd love to hear the extent to which that ends up being important.
So I would love to say that's true, but we are invisible to Amazon. When our clients escalate, they actually have to send the escalation from their email address. That
Mhm.
is the email address that's the primary login. However, if you are at Amazon and you have the right tools, you can see that we have third-party access to their account.
Hmm.
So if they see, and they look sometimes, and we're occasionally referenced in correspondence, not often, we are whitelisted, and we are in the Amazon Service Provider Network. And I believe we're the only appeal service in the Service Provider Network. So that does help us and give us a little juice. But the real magic is knowing what the different executives at Amazon care about. So Amazon prides itself on having an escalation culture, which kind of blows my mind. Because to me, I'm like, that's no way to run a company. But it's because they're very entrepreneurial and they're super siloed, and they've always wanted to move very fast with new programs. And so they build it while it's taking off. And then some stuff honestly never gets fixed until someone raises their hand and says, you got a problem over here. So when we escalate and help our clients with these escalation letters, we are writing it from an Amazonian perspective, like why they have a problem with their enforcement, why this particular program isn't working, how you're hurting buyers, how you're hurting Amazon because they have less selection. So we try and make it a little bit about our client and a whole lot about what Amazon cares about, which is itself and buyers.
Right, right. Great point. So are there with regards to the this upcoming year, it seems like a lot of folks are relying on new tools with regards to, creating imagery for their brands. Sometimes they're, starting to use AI. Are there any sort of watch areas as people sort of perhaps start to embrace AI to do their creative work in comparison to how they were creating, either product images before or those kinds of things?
So it's fun to get really excited about new tech, but you've got to control the tech. So in imagery, you still have to follow Amazon's guidelines. I've been seeing a lot more primary images, the main image, that are violating terms of service. And it's one of those things that you can get away with for a while. And then someone at Amazon notices we've got this going on a lot, and they sweep the whole catalog and
Mm,
you get caught up in it. And you just don't want to do that. So, the pure white background, the whole product shows, there's white around the product, not supposed to be words, all that for the primary image. That's a perfect example of how I can see someone getting really excited about their AI image and forgetting, oh, yeah, this is just supposed to be a picture. Also, especially for any product that might make claims. AI is inserting claims. So going back to the nutrition space and the supplement space, you cannot say something improves asthma. You cannot say it makes your hip hurt less from your arthritis. Those are claims. And AI doesn't have any respect for those rules. And I think that there's going to be a real tendency, especially for non-English speakers or non-native speakers from other countries who are listing their products on Amazon and saying, awesome, AI is going to make my listing read better than what I'm writing, which is probably true. But then AI inserts these words that are claims. So it's you still have to go in with a very critical eye and make sure that you're not saying things that just aren't going to be allowed.
Great. One other topic I'd love to delve into a little bit is sort of taking the early precautions. Like, so obviously, when you get called in, usually it's hit the fan already, right? But I would imagine that, had you had an opportunity to go in and audit an account and just take a look at things, maybe diving a little bit deeper than just the green bar, right? You could say, oh, wow, you guys should really take take a look at this, mitigate your risk, and do it now. So how much of your business is that versus going in and firefighting?
Not enough. I wish it were more. We have something called an assessment that is very inexpensive. It's $500. We try and sell it as much as we can. But, a lot of people, they just aren't as motivated. It's just like all of us, you forget to go to your annual physical, but you go to the doctor because you have the flu.
Right.
It's the same thing. I get it. We're busy. My number one piece of advice that sounds so stupid, but I promise you is the root of so many problems, is having good invoices. So Amazon suspends your hero ASIN and they ask for invoices and you realize you can't find them, or they aren't actually the right quantity, or you had a prospective invoice and you completely changed your order and everything is different. If that happens, it doesn't have your supplier's information, like the contact information. It has your personal information instead of your business information as the person paying. Amazon actually likes to see paid invoices, which I know are not the real world, but you can work out deals with your suppliers who will give them to you. Or most of the time, you just can't find them. People cannot find their paperwork. You do not want to have your ASIN down an extra 5 days because you're dealing with this kind of frustration. So setting up a very basic system for filing and keeping your paperwork, your testing documents, and your invoices is huge, because when we have clients come to us who can serve this up to us, we get really fast results. But when we have to go back to them 3 or 4 times saying, this is still a problem on your invoice, this is still a problem, and you can't fake it. You can't go in and change your own invoice. Amazon will find that and they will say you forged or manipulated documents and shut you down. So it seems like the most basic thing, but even large companies, this is huge. And then I think my other easiest thing to work on in your account, download your FBA returns report. I talk to a lot of sellers who don't know this exists, and it does, and it's a great report. And you can sort it by return reason. You can sort it by ASIN and then by return reason. And it is illuminating. You might find out that most of your returns that are, okay, there's good returns and bad returns, or shall we say neutral returns and bad returns. Neutral returns are wrong address, ordered by mistake, all that kind of stuff. Bad returns are bait and switch, defective, inauthentic, wasn't what I ordered, bad condition. Those are bad. Sometimes when you look in that returns report, you find out all my bad returns are this product. All my bad returns are this line. I had one guy selling Nike clothing. He'd sold Nike clothing for a decade. All of a sudden, his return rate went through the roof. So we pulled his returns report, which he'd never done before, and we sort it and figure out it's because this one line of women's clothing he just started offering, everything said too small, too small, too small, too small, too small, too small, all the way down the report. And he was like, okay, he stopped selling those. And he even got to return his merchandise to Nike for a credit. So yeah, that returns report is magical and one of the things that we go through for clients.
Absolutely. Well, it does sound like a lot of folks listening perhaps should invest in a review of the current status of their account, just so that it reduces the risk. I mean, the bigger they are, the bigger the problem when one or more of their hero products goes down, right? Or obviously something even more dramatic than that, the bigger the cost of that. So, I think rather than wait and take your medicine after you're sick, maybe go to the doctor early, get a physical, and get it taken a look at. I think that's some great advice. Um, the any of the shows that you think are really useful from an educational perspective and conferences that there's obviously the big ones like Prosper, but there are also some more niche ones, ones that either you've been involved in or you've attended or that you think provide a really good value to Amazon sellers.
That's a great question. So the recent one, Camp Ecom, that's done by Brandon Young, um, we've had great experiences there for a couple of years. Lots of really good content, smart people, and not just the same old, same old. Prosper can be really good. You do have to be careful. They will tell speakers they can't be promotional from the stage, and then some of them are. So you just have to be careful how you choose what you're going to attend there. But I think it's still very valuable, super valuable as a networking opportunity. I like Patterns Accelerate Conference. This year will be their third year. What's really fun there is it's brands, brands, and more brands. So if you're a private label seller, or a brand trying to establish an Amazon presence, that is the place for you because it's very different from the others where there's a lot of wholesalers, people who are resellers of merchandise on Amazon. And then also some of my favorites are the mastermind groups. So there are some great mastermind groups out there like Million Dollar Sellers and Titan Network and some others as well, that if you can find your people and find the right fit, they have some amazing events where people will get up and give case studies about their own account and share totally proprietary data. They all have agreements. They don't talk outside the group. They don't let any of the service providers into those conversations. I mean, it's super secret handshake kind of stuff, right? But they really learn from each other and really help each other succeed. So those are fantastic as well.
Great. One other just sort of, I'd love your perspective. There was a period a few years back when during low interest rate environments, um, a lot of capital was raised to do roll-ups of FBA businesses, and it seemed like it was going completely gangbusters. And then sort of the rug got pulled out from under a bunch of those, some of which had a lot of concentration in specific categories, and others who were really broad and with a category perspective. Do you feel like in the current higher interest rate environment and when capital is more scarce, there's still opportunities in that area? Or do you feel like that's cooled off to the point where you've got to make your FBA business be a successful business in and of itself, and sort of don't count on somebody showing up to write you a big check anytime soon?
So, Kevin, you make me really happy because you're the first person to start this conversation and mention high interest rates, which most people do not realize is actually the root cause of the entire thing. Now,
Yeah.
I am not going to say, because I've worked with several aggregators, several of them are either currently or have been our clients in the past. I mean, a lot of them. And so, I'm not going to say they all had a good business model. I'm not going to say they all made good acquisition choices because some of them did not. Some of them kind of got in that feeding frenzy of
Yeah.
we got to acquire, we've got all this money, we have to acquire, so they'd overpay. And then also they didn't always hire operators. Operating an Amazon business is very different from other kinds of retail and even online retail. And when you don't have enough operators, you don't get efficiencies, and people who don't understand your product line and your category and suddenly they're taking over that business, it's not always going to go well. But the root cause to me, and here's a shocking stat that I've been told by two different money men that most people don't know. So one of these aggregators would go out and raise, say, $50 million in private equity and then immediately get $50 million in debt. So if you heard about someone raising 200 million, they would then get 200 million in debt. It would be equal. And a
Yeah.
lot of these folks are really young. They're not like me. I'm an old lady. And I remember back in the 80s when interest rates were 20%. And so that is something in my head when borrowing money. Well, they all borrowed money at nothing, almost free.
Yeah.
And then interest rates went way up and they literally could not service their debt and keep their payroll and keep things moving. So it's a tremendous issue when you have hundreds of millions in debt. So I think they could have struggled on a lot longer and maybe even figured out how to fix their business model in a better interest rate environment. It would have been a possibility. Now, true, the multiples have gone way down. If you're building a private label business to sell, it's not going to be like it was. You're not getting 8 to 10x. It's cooled off. And you better be happy with it, how it is operating it. And if you get to sell, that's a bonus. But there is still private equity money out there acquiring these businesses.
Right.
So just because the aggregators aren't into it anymore doesn't mean there's not still capital looking for a home. There are a lot of private equity companies that have started e-commerce divisions. They're heavily invested in this concept of e-commerce and creating specific e-commerce funds that they have raised money for. So it's still a possibility. It's just not going to be the same kind of crazy bidding wars before.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention just popped into my head. I've noticed that a lot of sellers, when I chat with them, wearing my did it hat, my day job running an agency, is they completely ignore the fact that if they have both a Magento or Shopify store and an FBA presence, that often the Amazon product listing pages and other pages on Amazon are more actually likely to rank in Google and Bing than their own stores. And so they ignore the SEO implications of their Amazon presence, and they're all focused on SEO and trying to get their own domain to rank, which is all well and good. You need to invest in that. But then they fail to realize that just a little bit of work from making not only the product listing pages and other pages of your Amazon presence more SEO friendly, but then even potentially doing a little bit of link building outside of Amazon can actually result in some serious quote free or organic traffic. And so like I see it as a huge missed opportunity for a lot of sellers. I don't know if you are sort of privy to some of the marketing plans of the folks you work with or not, but it just seems like something, far too few people are investing in that.
I would completely agree. And in fact, go a little further in that I think some even major brands have listing detail pages on Amazon that are embarrassing.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
think that because they are an established brand or they've done well on a Shopify store that build it and they will come, just throw the picture up and a headline and a couple of lines and people are going to come by.
Yeah.
Amazon is super competitive. You've got to have all those lifestyle images. You need a video. You need benefits oriented copy. And then the biggest missed opportunity, you need A plus content, or what do they call it now? It's not A plus content anymore.
I
It'll
still
come to
call it
me.
A plus content too.
Yeah, yeah, it's enhanced brand content.
Yeah.
That's what it is now. And then also, the largest missed opportunity is the back end keywords.
Yeah,
I am
for sure.
shocked at how many major products do not bother to fill in their back end keywords. There's so many characters, it's like hundreds of characters worth of back end keywords that you can put in there. And that all relates to the BSR and the Amazon algorithm, which also then relates to, like you're saying, the Google results and everything else. So why on earth aren't you putting all your targeted keywords in the back ends of your listings? And that is free. I mean, that's doing a little bit of research on best keywords and then popping them in there. It's not like you're having to pay someone to do this for you.
Right, right. Great. Well, final thought really is anything you're excited about for 2024? We just sort of kicked off the new year and I'm sort of curious what you're excited about either for your own business or for the industry at large.
Okay, so I'm going to put in a shameless plug, Kevin. I'm going to be absolutely shameless and have a shameless plug. So I wrote a book It's called the Amazon Incubator, Grow Your Business or Hatch a New One. And it is a guidebook that's like a blueprint for selling on Amazon. So what makes it different, which this is the important thing, y'all know if you go search on Amazon, not on Amazon, on Google or on YouTube and say, how do I sell on Amazon? You come up with all of the Lamborghini videos of like the people saying, like with the rented Lamborghini and the rented bikini babe on the Lamborghini in front of the rented mansion and say, follow my plan and work 5 hours a week and you're going to have all this and live on the beach. And we all know that is not how Amazon works. Amazon is hard work. But it is incredibly flexible and you can use it as a side hustle. You can use it to accomplish small goals or big ones, like building your own, big brand or building your own job. But it can also be a way that you earn an extra $2,000 a month because you want your kid in private school or because you want to go on a great vacation, whatever it is. So instead of paying the $5,000 for the automated store that's just going to get suspended, please consider my $25 book, The Amazon Incubator, which you can find on all the major websites like Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And it really does walk you step by step through how to reach your goals, not someone else's. So if you never wanted a green Lambo, then this is the book for you.
Nothing against green Lambos, but most of them are fake, right? So
well, but hey, hot car, really cool. But most of the people I know, that is not their goal in life.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Lesley. It's been a pleasure and for imparting your wisdom to everyone watching and listening.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It was fun.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.